Let's see.
Okay, do you want me to go ahead and start off?
Sure. I'll follow your lead. How's that?
Sure, sounds great. So it actually works out perfect since we're both science teachers. I think Ori was elementary, so that's kind of why I decided to do
Okay.
the liabilities and stuff. But that is something I didn't know a whole lot about. So I know that like as science teachers, we have responsibilities as far as safety goes, especially with like lab equipment. And I don't teach chemistry or really anything super chemically involved, but kind of having those like safety data sheets and stuff like that. For like our situation, biology slash physical science, I do think it's largely like dissection would be a big one. So like proper use of equipment. With my particular students, especially my life science students, the maturity level is incredibly low. So that's something that I've always been very nervous about when doing projects and labs specifically. So that's something I kind of avoided this year, labs. I like to do the easy projects with papers and scissors being the most dangerous thing they had access to. But I think, you know, later on, I think it's good for them to do that kind of lab stuff because it gives them that, you know, science experience, even if it makes me uncomfortable at the same time. So I was kind of reading through NSTA, which is the National Science Teaching Association, and they have lots of kind of like regulations and stuff. So just your basic safety protocols, things like that. Something that I actually is an issue with my current room is I don't have a safety shower, I do not have an eye wash station, and I don't have a fume hood. And like, again, I don't teach chemistry, but if that were ever to become a thing, it would be something that I would need to move rooms for. And also that's why I can't really do a whole lot of chemistry-based things, because if there was an accident and I didn't have access to an eye wash station, the person who's responsible for that would be me. So the one time we did do something chemically related, I moved over to another classroom that had access to a fume hood. But next year we have some more teachers coming in, so I won't have access to that anymore. So that's something I got to figure out if I'm going to do, you know, especially chemical-based things. Some other things that kind of surprised me.
I don't have a fume hood either.
So have you done chemistry? Have you done anything that would require a fume hood?
I've done a little bit of chemistry, but again, like you, I don't have a safety shower in my room. I found an eye wash station. It was buried in my back room. So obviously it had never been put up till I got there. But it's not even, it's just this little like squeezy bottle that they put over their eye. And we do cover it during like the lab safety week, that first week or so that we've got. And they all know how to use it, but I don't feel like it's adequate enough, to be honest, to go full-blown chemicals. I think I'd have to take them into like actually the chem room, but even the chem room doesn't have all of the safety features. Like, yes, it's got the shower and it might have the nozzles on the sink, but it doesn't have the hood or anything like that. So it'd have to be very minimal chemistry or minimal reactions.
Yeah, see, and I did do one reaction lab, but none of the materials were like caustic or anything like that. But I do think that I don't know that I will do that next year. But I felt like my lab safety unit it flopped. I just didn't like it. The way it was structured, I just didn't feel very engaging, and we didn't really do a whole lot about that because, you know, I can talk about an eye wash station when we don't have one, so we can talk about it, but like they practically can't, you know, associate that. Pretty much the only thing we have is a fire blanket and a fire extinguisher. That's like my only safety equipment. Oh, and a first aid kit. So it's not really my responsibility. I feel like that should have been someone a little higher up from me. But probably just like improper planning would be my guess.
No, I feel you. And it probably depends on what the person before you did. Like the person before me, she does, because she transferred to the other school. I know she only does virtual labs. So she didn't need the hands-on stuff because that wasn't her route. And so a lot of the stuff that we need just isn't present.
Right. And we do a lot of gizmos, but they had to do that a bunch while they were on COVID learning. And so like coming back from COVID learning, they're like, you're really going to make us do the same thing that we were doing at home. So I try not to do those. And it's probably not the best policy, but I almost use them as punishment. Like, okay, if we can't behave in the lab setting, guess we're doing gizmos next week. And they're like, okay, everybody behave because I don't want to do this online anymore. So yeah, it's nice to have, but I feel like they got burned out from those during that COVID.
Yeah, I agree. I do one virtual lab, and it's the 7th graders that get it. And I'm like, see, if you can't behave in my lab, this is what we're going to do the rest of the time.
Yeah.
So if you want hands-on, you better behave.
It's a good like give and take. Like, okay, we can do this, but if we can't, we'll do that. I like to do that a lot with my students. I feel like giving them choices is the one thing that I found is the most. Like, instead of saying you have to do this, like, okay, you can do this or you can do this.
Yeah.
Psychology, I guess.
Hands-on versus virtual. I think they will choose hands-on most of the time.
Yep. And then I was surprised. I did have a couple students who were like, yeah, I'll do the gizmo. I'm like, you really don't want to like physically do the things? No interest, but you're always going to have those. Um, so on the NSTA, the other thing I saw that was a little bit surprising to me, and I'm not sure that, I don't know if it's like I'm guessing since it's an association, we don't have to like legally follow these, but they say science classes should have no more than 24 students to allow for adequate supervision during science activities. I had 23 at one point, and next year we were told 25 to 26, so I would technically be past that line. But again, without safety equipment, was it really, all that
Yeah.
difference? So
is there any chance of splitting?
See, we already have, geez, so our high school got so large in like 2012, they split the high school. And we're getting back to that like critical capacity. So we're hiring new people, but our incoming freshman class, this freshman class was 260. The next year is expected to be like 300 plus. So
Wow.
we only have, there's only about 4 of us that are technically certified to teach physical science. And so we usually split like 2 and 2, but last year they had to split to a third person, which is not very common for us. We've always had just 2 teachers teaching. So I'd be interested to see like where that goes.
Yeah, because I can't imagine some of the labs running and
No,
having that many kiddos
they were
in. Like,
pretty difficult to run with 23 was, I mean, almost impossible to run. Because when you start to get groups of 3 or 4 people, there's always 1 or 2 people that are not doing anything. And at that point, they start messing around with other groups, and then it becomes a safety
right.
issue.
Well, and I'm just thinking one of my kids' favorite labs, it's the Momentum Lab. And so they love it because I let them do the scooters.
Yeah.
And so when they, they bump in and then they move the next person like a bumper car experiment, but I can't even imagine 20, like that many scooters on the gym floor at once.
Yeah, not to kind of like jump off topic, but when I had subbed before I became a teacher, and my least favorite area to sub was gym because they had like 38 kids, 38 freshmen that you're supposed to like have all doing something without messing with each other in an open gym. It was honestly a nightmare. Like I could not manage it. And I had so much respect for our gym teacher. After that, I went up and told her, I was like, I don't know how you do that. Like I would absolutely lose my mind trying to manage all these kids. It was the worst experience I've ever had as a teacher. And I thought, oh, this will be fun. I would love to be a gym teacher. I would not like
Well, and did you see that reading where they were saying that gym teachers have like the most liability?
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, you are responsible, and yeah, could you imagine? And there was, I think, 36 in the class, and they pushed them to 40 before, which I think is just
too many.
But they require it for all freshmen. When you got 260 freshmen and you've only got 2 gym teachers, how else do you split it up? So,
yeah. Well, and the amount that they can be sued for, I think I wrote it down because I was kind of shocked. What was it? It was, they can be sued for up to like 75,000 million or something like that. It was like 75 and then 6 zeros after it.
Jeez.
I'm like, that's crazy. Like, if they are found guilty of like being negligent of their job. I mean, that's a lot of kids to keep track of.
That is a lot of kids to keep track of.
I took my biggest class out to we do a pond lab. We do cardboard boats at the end of the year for 8th grade science. And then we do a 3-day pond lab for freshmen. And that is nerve-wracking enough just to make sure they all stay out of the water, and doing what they're supposed to do. So I can't even imagine having more than that.
Yeah, we call it the OWL Center. It's Outdoor Wildlife Learning Center. It's like a small pond that's like air is pumped in through a windmill. It's pretty cool. It's a good place to talk about like water chemistry and flow of energy and stuff like that. But there's a dock, and we had to like close off the dock because we had like 10, 12 kids getting on the dock and all jumping at once to see if they could break it. Really, guys, we just built this, and now we are testing the strength of it. And then we had one student that pushed another student into the actual pond. And it's a nasty pond, like it's stagnant, covered in algae. It's not like a pretty area to swim by any means. So that student got suspended, but that's just one of those things. Just another area for them to get themselves in trouble, and us.
Yeah. So we go over it before we ever go out there. I'm like, look, this is the rules. We don't follow them, we won't do anything. Like we said, that threaten, that virtual whatever.
It does
have
work.
to do it. Because like, no, we're not getting in trouble here. And I don't want them to get hurt either. That's another big thing.
Right. Yep. Okay, so I just want to touch on one other area because we were really science specific. So something else that's come up to me, like I wasn't super aware of when I first started teaching, was IEPs, like individual education plans and 504s. First and foremost, I didn't even know what those were when I started. And then finding out like how they're legally binding documents, and like probably one of the most common reasons that teachers are sued or have like liability or go to court for various reasons. In particular, I had a student who is, a really, really talented soccer athlete. As a freshman, she's starting varsity. She's in the newspapers, really talented, expected to go to college for it. Nothing wrong with that. As far as school, riddled with ADHD, very difficult to deal with. And in particular, I have issues with her cell phone use. So it's something that she's one of the few students I take her cell phone. So lo and behold, just going to give you some backstory. So we come to towards the end of the year. She's in the middle of her soccer season, and she's told that because she's failing my class, she can't like do the things she's supposed to do. Which was never my intention. She's plenty smart enough to do it. She's just very difficult. Right. So got her doing some work. She turned in some things. She was right at that level of being able to pass, but didn't want to do one of those virtual gizmos. And so I'm like, hey, like I'm going to send you down to our, we call it the Learning Lab, which is a quiet space for students that are required that for their IEP. And so she asked me, should you go down there? I said, yeah, of course, it's part of your IEP. Go ahead. And then when she got down there, I pulled out my laptop because I just had a feeling. And she was sitting there typing in answer key to blah, 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 and then copying and pasting it right over to her own document. And so I screenshotted it. I sent it to her principal because we have 3 different principals. So I sent it to her specific principal. And then I called the Learning Lab. I said, send her back. She's cheating. Anyway, so she's a very volatile girl. She's been bawling the whole time. I said, this is the end of the world, but you can't blatantly cheat in front of me. It's not fair to your other classmates who had to do this entire gizmo. It's also like right there. Like it says, click this button, then look here and write what this is. So like it came down to like, anyway, so I sent her down, and lo and behold, I get an email from her principal saying that she didn't understand. I said, did you look at the screenshots? Because she typed into Google the name of the assignment plus answer key, and then I also screenshotted her copying and pasting it over. So like what part of that was misunderstood? Anyway, so this went back and forth. They ended up not really punishing her for it, but I had to write her up for it, so I went on a record. Right. So our office gets a call from mom. Mom threatens to sue because her daughter can't go to NCAA if she has cheating on her record, which principal says is not true. And then she tries to pull it wasn't part of her IEP. So she tries to, like, because she's not winning in these areas, she tries to pull, like, he's not following her IEP. So we had to, like, sit down and have this whole meeting about, like, all of her accommodations, and every last one of them, I checked the box. They were all being followed. But we had to have this huge, long meeting just for mom to be like, well, I still don't agree with it. And we're like, okay, well, we legally just went through all this paperwork just so you can tell, like, I'm sorry, but like we did the legal aspect of it. But it's scary to me that, like, if I had not checked even just one of those boxes, he could have taken something that had nothing to do with her IEP and then make it about the IEP and make me legally liable for it. So I guess I'm really glad that her case manager was like pretty adamant about making sure I had things covered, because she kind of knew the past of the parents and their, they like to contact the school and also lawyers, which they have on retainer. It must be a wealthy family. I don't know. Anyway, so that was like my briefest brush with IEPs, and that kind of made me look into it more. And so I talked to a lot of our SPED department. They just have a ton of liabilities behind their IEPs, like making sure they're being followed, making sure that all the documentation is correct. And again, I think it's one of the largest like areas of lawsuits in schools. And so 2 things brought this up for me. So the IEP, that specific situation, and then like restroom breaks. Okay, so if I have to use the restroom, we don't have adequate staff. And so like if I have to use the restroom, or if I have to step outside of the room to have a conversation with the student, technically, if something were to happen during that time, legally responsible for it. And so like, I guess I don't understand, because I've had to go. And so I ran to the restroom really quick, like just hoping they'd behave themselves. But I guess that concerns me a lot. Like there's no like wiggle room for that lab. Right. And then that specifically comes to IEP meetings, because we're required to have a staff member, like a core teacher, at the meetings. But if we don't have staff to cover it, I'm legally supposed to be at this meeting, and I'm also legally supposed to be watching my group of students. So how can I do both? I'm legally responsible for areas. That was another thing that I was like, it made me think about it. So
I guess I'm glad our IEPs are usually scheduled after school, which yes means you're there longer, but at least I don't have to find coverage, because we don't even have a bathroom in our building.
Oh, geez.
Where science and math are separate, so you have to go into the main building.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The thing I thought you were going with the restrooms is we had one person tell the kids that they could not go to the restroom during lunch. We're not allowed to leave the lunchroom. which means when they get to me after lunch, they've got to go.
Yep.
And I feel like I can't deny them that they have to go. If they have to go, they have to go. But since they can't go at lunch, I've got like all of them need to go all of a sudden at once, which takes up our teaching time. And so I was just curious, like, what are the school's limits in being able to tell them that? I mean, I can see if it's a problem every day. I do just send one person at a time, but I never say you can't go.
Right. That's actually something we've really been struggling with, because and it's funny that it's my class right after lunch, and they are allowed to use the restroom, but I usually they come in and it's about the same 5. When I first started, our science department they use hall passes. So like they get a hall pass and they can use it a certain amount of times. But once it got past that amount, like, again, like, I don't want to not let a kid use the restroom, but if it's a daily thing and it's always eating away at class time, yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. That is something that I really struggled with this year. And then we had like a we had an active shooter drill, which like we have those in the quarter.
Yeah.
And I had 3 girls in the bathroom. And I'm like, we're supposed to lock our doors, right? But I have 3 girls in the bathroom. Like, and when they got back, I was like, you guys understand that I was terrified because I'm responsible for you. So we got to work on like going to the bathroom. Like it's a dumb thing that we have to worry about. But like I was like a real like, crap, the building is being locked down. All the doors like automatically closed. I have 3 kids. I don't have I have no account for them. Like they're probably in the bathroom. I would hope they are, but they have like a bad habit of wandering, and like I can't manage a bathroom and a classroom at the same time. So
right,
almost like we need a hall monitor or something.
We actually had a conversation about this in school because we had a kid. He said it was a joke afterwards, but apparently he posted on his Snapchat that he was going to go to the school and he was going to shoot. And we're a small school, so of course everybody hears it,
right? And
they're panicking. We had the police, so and they are no longer at our school, but we had to really address the situation because we have to train the kids. What are they supposed to do if that happens, if they're locked out? I mean, do you guys cover that at all, like in your meetings or like any training with the kids?
Yeah, we do. Like I said, once a quarter, we do active shooter, and most of the time they're scheduled, but there was one that was random. That's why I had kids in the bathroom. But literally, we come into work that morning, we check our mailboxes, and you get a slip. And the slip either says run, hide, or fight. And you're supposed to like detail to your students. You get a different one every time, like what they should do in this situation. So like if you're hiding, what should you do? Where should you hide? How should you should the lights be turned off? Should you turn your cell phones on silent? Like things like that. And then like the run, like where is the best route? Like where is the shooter at? And they literally have like the police department come through and like knock on doors, like police department. And then like you're not supposed to open it. And they'll get onto you if you open the door. Like I could have been a random person just saying I was a police officer. I mean, they take it very seriously. And then it literally tells them what materials to grab to throw, like how the best. I mean, it really blows my mind that we have to go through this, but
I have to admire your school's like thoroughness of
it. They're very thorough. But Goddard was one of the first school shootings in Kansas. In fact, our principal was shot and killed like 1976, 1986, something like that. And it was like one of the first recorded school shootings in Kansas. I think that they really took that one to heart because, yeah, like I said, the principal was shot dead and like 2 other people were injured, a couple students.
Wow.
So I think that probably because it's more relevant to them, they take it very seriously. But it's a surreal thing to do, like to have people walking through the hallways like simulating an active shooter. I don't know. It's one of those things you hear about and you just experience, and it's just so mind-boggling to just think that that's something we have to think about and be aware of and train for. So
and I think I've done it more as a sub in California than I have actually teaching here. And I think part of it is because since our school is so small, everybody thinks, oh, it's a family atmosphere, everybody knows everybody. Nobody could ever do that. And then because even after the kid made the threats and we had to have those conversations, like the kids were still joking about it afterwards. And I'm like, it's not a joke, guys. Like he could have snapped. I mean, he could have just went ahead and gone through it. We never know.
Right. Yeah.
So
I didn't even think about that. That's like the perfect example of a liability thing.
Yeah. Because I mean, I know where we could hide in the room, but I like with my daughter when she was in elementary school, they're like, okay, you're gonna hide in this closet. I'm like, if they get in the door, that the closet's not going to help you. It's a sliding door closet. Like,
Yeah.
Um,
Does your school have like automatic door, like do your doors lock when alarms go off or anything?
I
I think
still
that's one thing
have
that's really nice is all our doors, they shut and lock themselves when the emergency
nice.
starts, as soon as the alarm goes off.
No, I still have the grab doorknob doors.
Yeah.
I don't even have like the,
Yeah.
the ones you can shove the chair in.
Yeah,
So,
that's, but
and it's
again,
a
like
hollow
who thought
wood
about
door
that?
outside my room.
Yeah. Oh, see, and all ours are like fire grade,
Mhm.
heavy duty doors. But I guess that's probably because it was a larger district, so they, had more
Right.
adequate funding for that and had a lot more people on staff to think about those things. So, and like I said, having their actual own shooting was a pretty big learning moment for the district. So, but like I said, that's been several decades, but still, it's interesting to see that it was really kind of like the originating area here in Kansas. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Um, yeah, I think our room was an old shop that got redone, and that's why it's like just sheetrock and hollow doors.
Yeah.
The only good door is the one that goes outside at the end of the hallway, and then basically I have another door in my room that leads to the outside, and that one's a metal door.
Yeah.
So I
But
guess
actually, so
flight
when
we could forgo out that back door
right.
if we had
Yeah,
to.
well, that's good. That actually brings it to kind of another interesting point. So when I was long-term subbing, I was in a room that did have a door that led to the outside.
Mhm.
And I was, it was during the spring and it was really nice out. And so, when the weather was really nice, I would open the door and leave it open so that like fresh air would come in. Well, I had an officer come by and make me close it. And, this was January 2021, and it almost only now just occurred to me, like, of course he did that. That's how that shooter got in the other place, is because the door was left open. But it's like I didn't think about that. I was thinking fresh air. My kids want to like feel the breeze from outside,
Right.
and I thought like, man, that guy was so rude. Why did he make me close the door? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And now that I like, reflect on it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that was liable. I was liable for having an open door. But it's just you don't think about those things, and now we have to. It's unfortunate. So. But yeah,
Yeah.
do you ever like have your door open? Because I was like, I got dinged on it. Like you
I
cannot.
have had my door open, but we're an open campus. We're not gated or anything. So really anybody could walk in anywhere. And I always think about like the shops are there and they always have the big shop doors open
Right.
too.
Yeah.
I think the only thing
So
that's
do you
really
have like
locked down is the main building. But
buzzers, like, or can you just like walk through the doors?
we just barely got the key fobs
Yeah.
with the buzzers. But that was just, and I think that was in response to the kid that posted
Right.
that initial threat. Before that, there was nothing. You could just walk in wherever. So, I mean, I have done it at my kids' school, and I know part of that is because subbing there before, but I've come home and just walked in and I'm like, oh, wait, I'm actually here as a parent right now. Like,
Right.
Because there's multiple doors anybody could get in.
So both your kids are in the same school district?
Same school district, different school. So
Gotcha.
blessing or curse, I don't know.
I mean, you got like the aspect of being a teacher and a parent. So
Which I love, but I'm glad that they're older. I don't know if I could do it when they were younger. Because especially the two schools are also rivals in the district,
okay.
which
It's
is
an interesting
interesting.
dynamic, yeah.
Yes. So I always get asked, who are you rooting for at today's football game? I'm going to wear green because yellow and blue make green.
There you go. It's a good answer.
Because they will nail me every time.
Yeah.
And I think part of that too, like I said, I have them starting from 7th grade. And I will have them all the way till they're at least a junior, if they take my STEAM class, a senior. So I feel like there how we talk about family dynamic, which is part of what makes it hard to perceive the threats, but it also, I don't know, they expect more from you, I think, at some point, because you see them every year.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah,
5
I
years.
think that probably helps with the building relationships part. Like the beginning of my year was rough, but after I had like a pretty solid relationship with my kids, because I have a year-long class, which I'm thankful for, because once you get to know them, it's so much easier to
Yes.
once they know your caveats, so my kids figure out what pushes my buttons, so I figure out what pushes their buttons right back. And I don't know,
Yep.
it went past I don't know, the relationships are something that I didn't realize were so important until I started to build them as well. But yeah. So
You were
wait,
talking about.
I did have a question for you. So your building, what grade levels are in just that building?
Okay, so technically the school is one building.
So
So we're
like
talking,
from K-12?
yep, K-12, and then I've got a preschool that's right next to my room. They just added a portable, that they just added that preschool part on. And so actually one thing that we do during the fire drills and so forth is I send my kids, they help with the preschool. So we go around, since they're right next door, and every student grabs a preschooler's hand and takes them out for the fire drill. But so it's preschool, science and math, which is, it used to be a shop, but it's been redone. Then you've got the ag shop, and then the main building is K through 12. Everybody's there. The office is in the middle.
Do you have any idea how many are in your building total?
It's not very many. I did look up the number. What was it? I might even have it right here in notes in my notebook. So they say for high school alone, it's 64. And elementary is 145. So we're about sitting around about 200 something.
Wow.
So not very many. But at least we're lucky enough, I feel like, to have that relationship, which, like we said. But it as far as funding goes, we don't really have a whole lot.
Right. Well, the reason I ask is because we have this policy where we pass our middle school students on to high school regardless of whether they passed a single class. So I had some students that quite literally passed only 2 classes. And the reason they do that is because they don't want older students in the same building as younger students. So I guess my question is, have you ever had like issues with like older students and younger students being in the same building?
Not necessarily in the same building. The only one I had, and it wasn't like a violent one or anything, it was more on the kid's emotional state, is they did put a 16-year-old into 7th grade. So he's very much aware of it.
Right.
And he's one that tends to act out. And I think part of it has to do with that awareness of he is so much older than his classmates. I mean, what are they, like 12, 13 in 7th grade?
Yeah.
And he is 16. He should be like a sophomore, and he knows it. But at the same time, they put him there because he wasn't reading. I think 1st grade reading level was where he was at.
See, and that's so tough because it's like it's more conducive to the level he's at, and it's these skipping over these levels. It doesn't help them in the long run. Because when I get students that can't, read or do basic math, well, that's what science is. It's the marriage between math and reading. I mean, if you can't do those, it's not easy to understand. And so I see both parts of that. Like I think it's good that he's in the class. Obviously, it's not great for him like mentally, and I'm sure it's something. But I feel like the level that he is learning is like where he needs to be at, which I find it very frustrating with our students because I started with, I think, 50 in my life science class. And by the time the year was out, I had like 45. I had 15 that transferred to the academy, which is like our alternative school, because they just didn't have the skills necessary to be successful. And what do you do if they don't have the skills?
I know that our SPED was really pushing for differentiation. So I differentiated a lot of his work. Either we cut assignments, or if they were building a complicated model, he had a more simplified one. But then I had to also be careful because this particular student, if he felt like he was being singled out, he would act out even more. And so a lot of times differentiation with Google Classroom was great, because I could modify his tests and things and nobody else could see anything.
Yep.
Right.
That with a lot of my IEP students.
But at the same time, like I had to be aware, where are his strengths, where can he tell me? So he's actually one of the reasons why I started offering verbal answers into like study guides and whatnot, so he can just verbally tell me. Yeah. So Flipgrid became an integral part this year, and that was something new because I hadn't really dealt with it before. It was always, you could either do it on paper or you could do it digitally. Didn't matter to me which choice you wanted, but now there's another option.
Yeah, that is nice. Yeah. I have a couple of students that have read aloud as their, now I don't have any that like verbalize their answers, but I have a couple that read aloud, and it's shocking to me how much better they do just by having someone read the question to them. Like it's truly the reading comprehension part of it. Like they have like an audio comprehension. I guess I'm not like an English major anymore. The audio part, like they're good. Like they can listen to a conversation, they can be like answer questions, but if they read anything longer than like just a couple of words, it doesn't like click for them. And so like when I first got in there, I didn't have a support staff, so I wasn't doing the read aloud. And then this next semester, I actually had all 3 of them, interestingly enough, in the same class. I was able to just like pull them out and read to them. Their scores shot up. I mean, it was just insane to me.
Nice.
That, I mean, it was just truly like, it, made me understand, I guess, a little bit better about why some of those accommodations are so important, because it truly did
Do you
help.
do you have reading essentials as part of your curriculum? We have something called reading essentials, and it's the material, the curriculum material, but it is taken down to, I think, 2 grade levels. So the language part, and then sometimes I'll just do it as like a whole class review, and then sometimes I'll give it to them independently. And then there is, what was that one? There was an app. I like Moat. You can read it and like in sections. And then there was another one that I want to look into where you can actually read the whole thing, or we'll read Speechify. Have
I think
you
we have
looked at
Speechify.
that one?
That's what we have.
Okay. Do you enjoy it? That was one I thought more maybe
I have
rather
not
than Moat.
used it. So I'm lucky because, our kids have case managers, and so they're the ones that kind of run over those things with them. Now, I've seen it being used, but I've never personally used it. Like I said, those were my read aloud students.
Right.
In my ELL, I had one ELL student who I gave pretty much anything I could give them access to. What was the reading essentials? Is that like a curriculum?
Yeah, it's part of our curriculum. So it's literally, it's the textbook chapter, but the language is modified for 2 grade levels below it.
What textbooks do you guys use?
It is, wow, I just had it. It's the zebra one. I want to say it's Harcourt, or I want to say it's Harcourt. I'd have to look at it again. My brain just.
No, you're fine.
Which one it was.
We're going through a science curriculum adoption. We were supposed to do it this year, but with COVID and we didn't have enough subs, we're pushing it again. But we haven't had new curriculum since 2011. So it's been a while. But so like none of the resources we have that like digital aspect or like anything tied into it. And one of the ones we're looking at, I think it's Pearson. They do have that where you can take the text and knock it down like 2 text levels. And that was one of the, for me especially, because like I said, I have those intervention level students. I was like, yeah, that is a big perk. But like I said, I don't think we'll adopt even 2 years from now, just with how things are moving.
Well, I'll look and I'll send it to you what we use, because in addition there's a workbook, and unfortunately we don't have the hard copy books, but the digital workbook will read it out loud also to you.
That's so nice. Yeah, you should let me know what textbook that is.
I will let you know.
Yeah.
And we use it's the same company for junior high and for high school.
Okay.
And so that's my bio book that I'm thinking about. For physical science, my physical science textbooks are really old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to update those so badly.
There's not much out there, I think, because, and I didn't realize this, but technically physical science is like an 8th grade class. And so they don't have new prints. Like 2011, 2013 are like the newest prints you can find for physical science, at least at a high school level. And so that's something I've been struggling with, because we're supposed to be adopting this curriculum, and they're like, yeah, we'll write you a blank check. Well, I don't know what a good curriculum is. This is my first year. I couldn't tell you what is good versus what is bad. Now, do I know there's some things that my kids need? Yes, but I couldn't tell you what company does that best.
Yeah, but I think we used Pearson for math. That's what we did. But it's I know that when they log in, it's Connect Ed.
Okay.
So, but I'll find out the information. I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
because I do like that part of it. And then I do a lot of modifying. I don't stick just to the textbook.
Right. Yeah.
Especially because I do have a lot of the SPED kids, and I do have a lot of ELL. And so like quizzes, I love those because quizzes will read it to you as well.
Yeah, quizzes.
And they love it because they can redo it. So especially those guys that are like going back to the IEPs where they can repeat assignments, I could just leave it open for a certain amount of time and they can keep redoing it.
Do you do those for a grade? I've only ever used them for exam review, but it is a nice program. I've never really, I used it for exam review, and that's pretty much it.
I'll use it in place of a study guide sometimes because they engage with it more.
Yeah, it is.
So whatever question I'm going to ask on the study guide, I'll just transfer it to the quizzes. And then like I said, I tell them I would like them to get an 80% before they're done. So they have that opportunity to redo and just reinforce. If they do it correctly, not just write down the answer and then do it right the next time.
Yeah, I use CK12. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's like this free, it's based out of California. Anyway, I use it all the time for their reading because I pull from their middle school life science textbook because that's kind of the reading level we're at. And they have like those nice little graphics and interactive stuff, and then you can answer questions. But the issue I have is no matter how much I push it, my kids will literally just skip right through it and answer the questions as fast as they can. And they'll answer them all wrong and then go back through and answer them right the second time. Did you really learn anything from that? And so now I have them take a bare minimum, and they just act like it's the worst thing in the world. 5 pieces of information. Like, the end of the world. Mr. Stearns makes us write down 5 pieces of information, but they still will write down like 5 of the most basic pieces of information, get right to questions. And CK12, I don't know if you've used it, but they have this really in-depth report. It shows you like the seconds they spent on each section. Like you can see right where they skipped through, right where they had their screen open for an hour and a half just to like have time on there. And it's really good, but it's really frustrating. It's like it's just do anything
I used
they can
CK12 during COVID.
But
no, I do like CK12. I have looked at it, and I've used it as supplementary material with our textbook.
For, like reading sections.
Uh-huh.
And then I tell them they can use their notes on the exam, and you would think that would motivate them, but it never does. So
no.
Binders are optional for me. That have like the most detailed notes, and they're all color coordinated with flowers on the side. And then, okay, you see, guys, this is what I want you to do. But yeah.
So I tell binders, I am not grading them. I said, but if they're to their benefit to keep them up, because they can use them on their test. I'm like, well, it depends on you.
Yeah, we did some like fill in the blank interactive notes for our final, and I told them they could use it. Well, I still had several students who recycled them, threw them away, and so the exam rolled around, and like, oh, I could use them. Oh, I threw it away. I'm like, oh, you did? That sucks. Who made that decision? Because I specifically told you not to, but I wasn't going to stop you.
Yeah, I think the only ones who get anything printed are my sped kids, because usually that's one of the first things on their plan.
Right, like a note system.
Yeah, and I just like you were talking about, or the legal part of just making sure you hit all their check boxes. Like
very stressful, especially for your first year.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when they like detail out legally, and like we've had some teachers that had to go to court for it. I mean, they didn't go to court; our lawyers or whatever did, and I don't think that they ever got sued. But like the fact that they took them all the way to court, I mean, it's just
right.
I just couldn't imagine. No, I'm sure there's situations, but I just couldn't imagine. Not that I have children, I just couldn't imagine myself getting in a position where I would sue a school district unless it was like neglect or some type of abuse. I guess I can't quite see that.
I mean, my kids have had teachers that they don't get along with. And I said, that's fine. If you don't agree with them, you don't have to. I said, but you have to respect them. And yes, I do expect you to do your homework. And so one of the things that I found was interesting, there was this, what was it called? It was like educational negligence or something like that. It was called. I'm just trying to, where they said that the teachers could be sued because they were considered as not doing their jobs. And so my question was, well, how much of that is us not doing our job, and how much of that is like Joey not doing his homework,
right? Or
Joey not paying attention? Like, how do you stipulate that? Where is the line there?
Yeah, that's a difficult line to draw.
Where'd it go? Oh, here it's it was educational malpractice is what it was called. And I was like,
malpractice.
Yeah, failing to provide an adequate education.
That is a very vague statement for a legal liability. So
I'm like, yeah, how do they judge that?
One of the assigned readings?
Yeah, it was what are teachers' responsibilities ones? Yeah. So I was kind of shocked because I've heard of malpractice. Yeah, I've heard of medical malpractice, but I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
How would you prove that?
Yeah, how would you prove the absence of it though? Because like you need documentation for proof. So if there's absence of document, does that provide proof? That's I
mean, yeah, I don't understand. I mean, because would they say, okay, you're just, I don't know, throwing notes up on a PowerPoint, so you're not actually meeting his needs? I feel like you'd have to have something like the 504 or the IEP, right, to even be able to know where to begin on that. But I was very surprised that, yeah, we could be sued for that.
That is wonderful.
Yeah. I was like, the code of ethics, I get that part, but yeah, the other part. I mean, I feel like you would almost have to just sit and do nothing.
Right.
In order to have that actually be a thing. I mean, even if we don't do the job well, as long as you're trying, I don't think you could be done.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, again, I feel like that'd be super, super hard to prove in court.
Mhm. But it's a thing. I'm like, wow.
Another
I
part of
was,
the liability aspect is the mandatory reporter thing. I don't know if you've ever had any situations where you had to like report something that was, I had a student that, and I don't really, I mean, I'm 99% sure this wasn't a real situation, but just joking around for attention. But he was really struggling, and parents were, I don't know, like out of town, and he was bringing a bag to school, and it was very clear that it was like a bag for him to like with clothes, and and it was a much more than the backpack that you traditionally would be carrying around. And he asked me to keep it in my room, and which I told him he could. And then I let that go for a couple days, and then I was like, are you in a sport? Like, what's the backpack for? And then he goes, oh no, I'm staying at my friend's house because me and my parents got in a fight. And I'm like,
oh,
oh, shit. Like, probably should have
yeah.
reported this a long time ago. And so I kind of talked to him, like, hey, how long has this been going on? Turns out he'd been out of his house for like a week long.
Wow.
And so I went and I talked to his counselor, and they had like a whole thing, and they contacted CPS, and like,
Mhm.
anyway, this all happened, and he came up to me and was like pissed that I said something. And I told him, I said, it's my responsibility. And also, like, I'm a little concerned. Like, one
Right.
day I could understand, maybe, but a whole week away from your home, that just indicates to me that something's like more
Yeah.
wrong than what you're indicating. Anyway, a couple weeks went by. Actually, it was the next semester, and he was just like on one that day, and he kept making comments. And I don't know what it brought into it, but he made the comment of, something about like pushing his mom down the steps, or that she would push him down the steps. And like he said it in a joking manner, but it was another one of those, like,
Yeah.
in the back of my brain. So I sent a message to his counselor, and they again contacted CPS, and the parents had to come in, and like, I don't know. So have you ever had any situations with mandatory reporting?
Yes, we did. We had a child that was contacting older men on her computer. And so that was a big red flag. And it turns out it's a good thing we did report it, because she had to be removed from her home for that was a symptom of something else that was happening at home.
Right.
Um, but I've also done mandatory reporting before. I grew up, my parents did foster care as I grew up, and then I did foster care before we moved out here to Kansas. And so, yeah, and I just have to remind the kids,
Mm-hmm.
if you tell me something, if I report it, I'm not reporting it because I want to peeve you off. I want you to be safe,
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, that's part of our responsibility when you're in our care. And yes, they do get mad, but I
Yeah.
mean, I would rather them be mad and safe than
Mm-hmm.
not be safe. Because if we hadn't reported, the one girl, she would still be in the home where
Still in
basically
a
she was being
situation.
abused. Yeah. So, and it's just one of those things, and it's hard.
That is really hard. Yeah, that's just, I don't know why I felt like I was in trouble when I reported it. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think it goes back, like, I don't know about if you felt that way, but it almost feels like we are betraying their trust, but at the same time, we have to remind ourselves we are doing it.
It's our responsibility.
Yes. I mean, we're the adults here.
Yeah. And I think I've seen that a lot with our English teachers, because they did an assignment over, I don't know what it was, but a lot of them wrote about some, really concerning experiences and past things. And there was quite a few things that went down after those were turned in. And I actually had two students turn them into me, and I'm like, I'm not an English teacher, please don't make me. And I read them, and one of them, really, really sweet girl, but had just been moved around and ended up moving in with her grandmother who worked at the school, and that's why she was there. But wrote about her past and her mother's drug abuse and the abuse in the household, and just the sweetest girl I have ever met. And I never, never would have guessed that she had gone through what she went through. And we had another girl that was writing about like sneaking out of her house and stuff. And it's just wild.
Yeah.
So many aspects of education that I just didn't even think about until I was in the middle of it.
I think one of the most surprising things that is that relationship that you build with them. And sometimes I joke around and be like, oh, I will always remember them, but they're probably just a blip on their radar. But I think sometimes you don't realize how much they actually do trust you while they're there.
Right.
That is a huge
Like, a lot of them
responsibility.
have a hard time showing trust. So
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Towards the last couple of days of school, they had students like write notes to their teachers, and I got so many notes, and it was shocking to me because like none of these students really act that way like face to face. But it's funny when you like give them somewhere to like reflect without it being, yeah.
Yep. And I know we keep getting these emails. We're not supposed to interact with them outside of school and things. And I'm like, do you realize how small our town is?
Yeah.
Like half these kids in the classes are my kids' friends. So they come hang out with my kids.
Right.
So it's just, I don't know.
I wonder if that's the district's way of covering their own liability, is saying, well, we did tell.
Maybe, but if like, you know, daughters in my class,
it's not feasible.
They come over, they come to visit my kid. I'm mom at that point. I'm not,
right.
you know, I'm not Mrs.
Teacher somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's I think it's true across both schools, because both schools in our district are super small, which is why we're combined. And so like I think one email said we weren't even supposed to have contact with the kids as like parents, like hang out with them. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm friends with all my kids as teachers because, you know, they're friends with their kids and we all do hang out together. Like,
yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, but like you said, it was probably the district protecting their own.
Yeah.
I just think our dynamic is, some of the larger school dynamics just don't necessarily, they don't translate well.
No.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I mean, I do have a policy, like I do not, nobody's on a social media account with me. I was like, nope, because I've gotten friend requests. Have you gotten like that before? And I'm like,
not Facebook.
Nope,
I
like,
use Facebook. They try and request my Instagram quite often, and I will delete the request and they will resubmit it.
Yep. And they're like, oh, are you on Snapchat? No, yes, so I can communicate with my son. I'm not adding you. Like,
I always tell them that. Like, are you on Snapchat? No. Yes, but no, you cannot have my Snapchat.
It's like, you graduate high school, you turn 18, come back and talk, but we are not doing this while you're in school. Like, and you know what, I'm interested, we didn't have anything kind of like that on our module, but internet safety,
that is a good,
that is a thing. I feel like that could be
a big thing. Our district recently had us, they mandated, I think it's the state of Kansas actually, so I don't know, obviously it was smaller districts, I'm not sure, but they mandated what they're calling digital citizenship, which is basically like learning how to behave in an online environment and like how things that are digitized can last forever and be resurfaced even if you delete them, and like how you should treat each other, and like digital bullying and stuff like that. So I think that it's good that we're starting to really address those things, because you know, like I said, when I was in school, I mean, some of us had cell phones, but it was never like, I mean, now their lives revolve around their social media and their cell phone usage.
Yes.
So like actually taking their phone, quite literally for some of them, feels like they are disconnected from their lifeline, which is really sad to see. And I think that's why we're seeing so many more issues with that, like inappropriate use, like taking pictures of people without their permission. And I think that's, again, why I think a blanket policy would take care of not only issues with like distractions, but also a lot of stuff we're experiencing, like vandalizing of our bathrooms. Like there was a big challenge that was going around on social media about like,
the Snapchat one, or
calculator stolen from me that I found smashed in the parking lot. I mean, it was a hard time. And here's the thing, most of them were doing it so they could record it, but if they didn't have the phone to do it, where's the motivation, you know, if they're not going to get any clout on social media?
That was that TikTok challenge, right?
Yes, and it was a big deal, and we're still dealing with that. I mean, we still have issues with people vandalizing the restrooms. But
kids were taking stuff out of teachers' classes.
Yes, which is just it's offensive. I told my kids that, because the calculators I had stolen were like Dollar Tree calculators, because I didn't have a budget when I first started, and I knew I was going to need calculators because I didn't want my kids using their phones during exams. So I had to provide calculators. I bought the really cheap Dollar Tree calculators. And so, like, I told my kids, like, yeah, it makes me sad, but these were like $2. But it's an aspect of it. Like, I spent my own money on this.
Right.
I brought it in for your use. Like, I don't use these. And then you're going to take them and destroy them?
Yeah.
Like, I find that more offensive than the $3 that I lost. And we ended up finding out, because we have cameras everywhere, we ended up finding out who the student was. He offered to pay it back. I said, I don't want your money. I said, I just want your respect. Like, for just a solid second, I need you to sit here and, like, just say you're sorry. Like, that's all I'm really looking for. Because it bothered me. Like, it's my first year. Like, and it was pretty early on in the year. So it was like, what did I get myself into? Like, I can't even trust them to not destroy a literal dollar calculator, then what can I trust them to do? And it got better, but.
No, I get it.
Social media,
I had that with lab supplies.
yeah. Our scales, for obvious reasons, are a hot commodity, so they are locked up because we had so many scales stolen.
Wow.
I'm sure for
I
appropriate
wouldn't know about
reasons.
scales, but yes. Oh yeah.
I'm sure for
They want to know
appropriate
exactly how
reasons.
much those toy cars weigh, right?
It's for baking.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on? I think we kind of asked where we needed to.
I know we didn't quite stick to one topic, but hopefully that's okay, because I just feel like there's so much school safety stuff and things we don't think about. But
we
other
took
than
the
that,
topic and expanded on it. So
yeah. So no.
I am
Like I said,
sad Ori did not join. I feel bad, but what do you do?
Maybe, well, like I said, I appreciate you sending that email.
I'll send him a copy of this, and then maybe he can just like watch it and make his own reflection, and then get at least partial.
That's a good idea.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, it was nice to meet you. I don't think we have one until module 5, so like probably 2 weeks from now. But
yes,
I will try and top of that and send out another email.
Okay, and hopefully, I'll make sure. I may have to do it via phone, which I think will still work out, right? If that's okay. I know my oldest will have. He's playing Legion baseball, so he'll have zones coming up. Hopefully, we don't have another storm come through.
Yeah.
I think I told you we had the 2 in that week, and the first one, crazy. I actually drove home through it. Jeez. Never again do I want to repeat that experience. And then the second one took out buildings in town and took out the power for a couple of days. So I was like, oh,
it's a rough start.
Yes.
If you need to, essentially, we can do it early if that's something that we can all find a time. It's not. I mean, and really, they're not all that difficult. We just have to like talk for 30 minutes.
Right.
So, if it works out, we can schedule it even next week if that works out for you.
Well, I think it might work out in that week. I tell you what, I will look at the schedule again, and I'll just shoot you guys an email. Will that work?
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, I work nights, so pretty much as long as we can do it midday, I'm good.
And that works out perfectly for me. Last week is STEAM, so all I got to do is get the kids up for weights and send them out, and then I can focus on what I got to do.
There you go. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Well, nice to meet you.
Do we post the actual recording, or do we just have to
I think so.
Okay, I will email this to you.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. See ya.
All right. Thank you.